5. March south. Wolf Redoubt, July 21st. The amphibians nosed ashore, 20 kilometers southwest of Kizil-Kala port, on the hard desert sand where a break in the reed beds formed a broad salt beach. They had been on the river for 2 hours. They were now only 50 kilometers due north of the wolves' headquarters at Kurt Burj, and there was still no sign of any pursuit. On their vehicles' radios, the guerrillas had heard the frantic messages from the military at Kizil-Kala and the answers from Khanabad HQ, which showed that the Russians were convinced that a paratroop unit had mutinied, either at Kunduz or Talakan, and they were trying to find the fugitives upstream or else on the other side of the Oxus. Reports had poured in, claiming that the Russian mutineers were trying to reach the USSR to desert, and also that they were trying to join some disaffected infantrymen to the east of the port, where the Russians had had trouble with their own garrison before. The KGB, or military intelligence, must have decided that Azambai was a real Russian colonel, pretending, for some reason, to be a guerrilla. Adam, sitting beside Major Hahn in the cramped amphibian, asked him how the Soviets could have become so confused. Well, you see, we have a good radio system back at Wolf Castle, and some pretty good disinformation men too. I've already informed them that the escapees are going north or east, and they have broken into the Russian radio network to report it for us. The eagle smiled. You think of everything. So where shall we head now? Home. We could even make it to the city of Mazar-i-Sharif, 200 kilometers from here along the sand dunes. We've got enough fuel. But it's safer to get home before dawn and to get immediate treatment for the wounded. There was no road from here to the reed beds, but the APCs had big tires, centrally pressurized, and power steering. They were able to travel overland, and in a zigzag, the convoy found the surface firm enough to complete the journey in under 2 hours. At 3 o'clock in the morning, they were rolling beneath the creepers at the eastern entrance to their hideout. They had not even had a puncture. Soviet vehicles were not only rugged, but they had few of the frills which other armies usually consider necessary, and that made for reliability and less maintenance. Warned by radio, the Wolves' hospital was ready for the casualties. As the fighters climbed down from their vehicles, they slapped the bullion boxes for luck and poured, cheering and hungry, into the mess hall where a feast was waiting for them. Noor hugged Adam as he came in. And that's not because of your millions in gold, she told him. In spite of the journey, the tension, the battle, nobody slept that night. When the casualties had been visited and pronounced to be in a stable condition, the leaders held a meeting to discuss the loot. In terms of arms purchases, $15 million would buy no more than 10,000 automatic rifles. On the other hand, such money to the impoverished guerrillas meant medicines, arms, and some relief for the victims of the Russian terror. In the end, it was decided to send an equal amount of gold to each of the 28 provincial commanders of the resistance, to spend as they wished. The equivalent of 600 guns for each province was at least something. Then Adam broke open the captured document case. One of the papers in it dealt in detail with the transfer of the treasure of Afghanistan to the Soviet Union. The gunboat was to be used since there was no air freight capacity available. The army monopolized it. And it was to be guarded by a large KGB contingent. The direct route from Termez railhead across the Oxus was too vulnerable to guerrillas, hence the choice of Kizil-Kala. This involved a long trip along the Karakum Canal, detailed in wearisome pages of orders, itineraries, and explanations. Pirates who are also bureaucrats must be the most tedious combination on earth, complained Noor as she skimmed the documents. At the bottom of the case lay a thick book marked Altin Kush. Noor opened it and read, Operation Altin Kush, Highest Secret Classification, Committee for State Security, KGB. Gold specie, obtained from Kajakai, engineer Sharifi, horde of Ahmad Shah. Coins to the bullion value of $30 million approximately, consigned via Kizilkala to Moscow KGB. Attention Halzun Jan Magomatov for Traditional Arts Foundation. Transportation orders in document KGB/6/765/00987, Afghan Sky. After the transfer of this contingent to the USSR, the remainder of the Kajakai gold in Kandahar province will also be known as Altin Kush and comes within the control of the operative Altin Kush. It constitutes gold specie of the 16th century and earlier, minted in India, Iran and elsewhere, to the face value of $400 billion. Repeat, 400 billion American dollars. Signature of amount confirmed, Uvarov. The treasure, now at Kandahar, is to be transferred abroad under the orders of Altin Kush in the Caspian transports, and all aspects of this activity are to be subject to the greatest secrecy. The reference numbers for communications, security, and so on are as follows. $400 billion worth of gold coins. Noor repeated the sum and looked at the others, sitting around the table in the mess hall. Are you sure? Adam craned his neck to make out the figures. I'm sure, and even the Nikolais could hardly believe it, since they repeated it and had the confirmation signed by someone at KGB HQ, Noor said. Your father found the hoard of Ahmad Shah, and only a part of it is what we've captured, said Yusuf. The rest of it is still there, Noor said. She looked stunned. Major Han needed a moment to get used to the idea. I know I'm slow, but I find this kind of information hard to absorb, he said. Qasim said, We can hardly go to Kandahar and capture the gold. We'd never manage it, would we? Wouldn't we? Asked Adam. $400 billion is about equivalent to the total assets of all the Gulf oil states. If the Russians had that, they would be out of their financial problems in one bound. There's no knowing what they might be able to do. Of course, if they put it all on the market at once, the price of gold would collapse, and with it, perhaps world trade. On the other hand, if they spent it slowly on development, food, and arms, they could rival the United States itself. They always have been poor. With such reserves, they really could compete. The way they do things, and with the people they have in power now, there'd be very little hope for the rest of the world. Okay, said Palmer. That means we've got to do it. But you realize that Kandahar is right the other end of the country, 50 or 60 miles from the Pakistan border, almost on the Arabian Sea, don't you? We'd have to cross the Koi Baba range, go right through the high Hazrajat uplands, hundreds of miles of country that people never traverse. But they do, said Karima. That is the route taken by the Kochis, the nomad people. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. They used to come in trading caravans and selling sheep to our village. Many of them were from Kandahar itself. They looked at the documents again. There was no sign of any date, no hint at all as to when the treasure might be ready to be moved. Only that it still seemed to be there, pending finalization of export arrangements by Altin Kush. All right, said Adam. Let's go and find Altin Kush. As the days passed in the Wolves' Redoubt, the excitement of the expedition caught everyone's imagination. Major Han, with his near-perfect organization, sat day after day with Adam, Azambai, and the others, planning the route, discussing the likely conditions, putting together the necessary equipment. Food, medication, water, clothing, animals, radio communication, arms and ammunition, Major Han had, or could find, the answer to them all. 10 days after the capture of the Jihun's gold, when it was already on its way by courier to the provincial commanders which the Turkestanis had located, most of the wounded guerrillas were either recovered or well on the mend. The exception was Louis Palmer. His bayonet wound, though reopened and cleaned by Dr. Babanur, became more and more septic. The bacteria were resistant to the weak Russian antibiotics, which were all that could be obtained. Day by day, Adam and the others watched as the infection became generalized. 2 weeks after the attack on the Jihun, Louis Palmer died. It was with heavy hearts that the guerrillas took part in the simple burial service. In the words of Major Han, Ghazi Kalan, the big one, the American who came to this land and made his life here, was the opposite of those of us who were born Afghans, whatever our physical stock. He took this Afghanness on of his own free will. He took it on and he died for it, for freedom. As he has given us so much, may the All-Highest give him peace.